Today's lesson is it time to kill the death penalty? Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're going to talk about the death penalty and whether we should abolish the death penalty, which I think is probably something that most people in Taiwan would be against. I think I've read polls that suggest that people in Taiwan love their death penalty. They don't want to get rid of it. They feel it's necessary. But it's not the case around the world. More and more countries around the world are getting rid of the death penalty because they think it's probably ineffective and it's just probably all about revenge.
Absolutely, yes. Last numbers I heard for Taiwan were about 80% of Taiwanese people support continued use of the death penalty. But of course, here there was recently a Supreme Court decision that said that while the death penalty is constitutional, it should only be used in the most extreme cases. And even that caused a bit of a political firestorm. They were kind of saying people who killed multiple people or someone who killed children or something should still have the death penalty reserved for their crimes, but simple murder, it might take a little bit more than that, and even that caused a bit of controversy. Whereas, yes, you're right, in America, which traditionally had quite a strong death penalty sort of laws and support, it's been losing favor a lot over the last few decades. Several states have stopped using the death penalty, even if it is still a law on the books. They are no longer using it, and I think all European EU countries do not have the death penalty. Canada, where I am from, I don't think has used the death penalty in many, many decades. So it is a very interesting topic. There are some changes, but there are also some things that people just sort of can't get their heads around and still support the death penalty as an effective deterrent to the most extreme forms of crime. So let's get into it. We're going to be reading an article that's also sort of a little bit of a debate between a couple of friends or coworkers or classmates about their different ideas, attitudes, and opinions towards this difficult topic of the death penalty. Is it time to kill the death penalty? The death penalty is an extremely sensitive topic that raises important questions about ethics, legality, and the value of human life. Supporters claim it's a necessary deterrent, while opponents point to moral concerns and the risk of wrongful convictions. Below, 8 individuals give their opinions on this complex topic.
大家好，第一部分介绍名词 ethic， 它的意思是伦理、道德规范或是道德。例如 The ethics of animal testing have been a subject of debate for many years. 多年来，动物实验的道德规范一直是具有争议的话题。或者 Claire has a strong work ethic and always completes her tasks on time. Claire 有强烈的职业道德，总是准时完成任务。再来看到名词 opponent， 表示反对者，同时也可以是比赛中的对手或是竞争者的意思。例如 The opponents of the law took to the streets when it went into effect. 该法律生效后，反对者上街抗议。或是 Mike beat all of his opponents and won the game. Mike 击败了他所有的对手，并赢得了比赛。接下来看到名词 conviction， 它的意思是定罪或是判罪。例如The conviction was based on strong evidence presented in court. 这次定罪是基于法庭上呈现的有力证据。也可以说 After the trial, the jury reached a conviction within hours. 审判结束后，陪审团在几小时内做出了判决。
Okay, so let's talk about the first paragraph here. Of course, the question is it time to kill or get rid of the death penalty? Kind of interesting title there because the death penalty does involve killing someone as a punishment for their crime. And here in the first paragraph it says, the death penalty is an extremely sensitive topic that raises important questions about ethics, legality, and the value of human life. So there are lots of topics out there that are quite sensitive. Here in Taiwan, of course, you've got some topics that are so sensitive that I can't even mention what they are. In the U.S., gun control is a sensitive topic. People get very upset when you discuss that, or abortion or other things. And, of course, when you talk about the death penalty, especially here in Taiwan, it's a very sensitive topic. Most people, again, support it. So if you even dare to suggest getting rid of it, you're probably going to get in a lot of trouble.
So there's a big question about the ethics and legality and the value of human life. This all sort of circulates and comes around when we bring up the topic of the death penalty. Ethics is basically kind of like morality or law. It's an idea of moral principles that kind of control or govern a person or a group's behavior. We're talking here about right and wrong on a very fundamental level. Not necessarily what the law says is right and wrong, but what sort of people's morality will say, what society will say, what religion will say. So, for example, it's not against the law to lie to your lover or something like that about cheating on them, but it's definitely not ethical. It goes against a basic sense of right and wrong. So when we talk about ethics, it's a little bit different from the law. Of course, a lot of the things that we consider to be ethically wrong will also be illegal, but in other cases, it's more about your personal beliefs, your religious beliefs, your personal standards, and things like that. So there's the ethical side of it. Is it just wrong to do this, even if the law says we can? Legality, that's the law. So when you talk about the legality of something, is it legal or is it illegal? What does the law say? This has nothing to do with ethics. This has more to do with if you do this and get caught, will you get in trouble with the police? If you lie to your lover, you might get in trouble with your lover, but you might not get in trouble with the police. But the legality of something talks about if it is legal or illegal. And then, of course, there's the value of human life. How valuable is human life? Even the life of a murderer, even the life of a person who has done something terrible, and we think this person should never be allowed to be free in society, but does that also mean that we should kill them, that they should be removed from society permanently by taking their life? So supporters claim it's a necessary deterrent, while opponents point to moral concerns and the risk of wrongful convictions. That's a pretty basic, good little breakdown for the yes side and the no side, the pro side and the con side. The supporters, the pro people, the people who like the death penalty, they say it's a necessary deterrent. We need it because it stops people from committing crime. If you're going to go out and murder someone, you might go, whoa, if I do this and I get caught, I will be killed by the state. I will be caught and put to death because of the death penalty. I am not going to kill that person. I am going to change my mind about this terrible crime that I was about to commit because of the deterrent effect. So to deter something is to stop someone from doing something. A deterrent is what will stop them. And then what do the opponents say, the people who are against the death penalty?
Yeah, they have moral concerns, and they're talking about the risk of wrongful convictions. Yes, indeed, sometimes they point out statistically speaking that some people are actually executed when they later were found to be innocent of the crime. It's a small percentage, but still it is possible to kill the wrong person if you are executing everybody. And these are opponents to the death penalty, people who are against it. They point out those moral concerns. It's immoral to kill somebody just because they killed somebody, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth sort of thing. They think that's kind of immoral. And of course, we've got those wrongful convictions. A conviction is when a trial and a court finds you guilty of a crime, and then you're going to be punished by being executed or by having to spend time in jail. So if you're convicted, that means you're found guilty and you're about to be punished for your crime.
Yes, and opponents, of course, are people who are against something. If you're playing a game, your competition is your opponent, the person or the team you are playing against. In this case, it's the opponents in this debate or this argument about the death penalty, whether to have it or not. So below, 8 individuals give their opinions on this complex topic. We're going to hear from 8 different people, hear all of their opinions, their attitudes, their ideas, their feelings about this complicated or complex topic. So let's begin with Chloe and Joseph.
Chloe, I firmly believe in the death penalty. True, it's a harsh punishment, but for the most serious crimes like murder and terrorism, it's only right that there are equally serious repercussions. Victims' families deserve closure, and the death penalty sends a strong message that society won't tolerate such actions.
Joseph, I'm not convinced that the death penalty actually prevents crime. Where's the proof to show that countries with the death penalty have lower murder rates? Honestly, it feels like it's more about revenge than justice.
第二部分介绍名词 repercussion， 表示不良影响或是恶果。我们可以说 The company's unethical practices had legal repercussions. 该公司的不道德行为导致了法律后果。又或者说 Luca's dad warned him that there would be repercussions if he came home too late. Luca 的爸爸警告他，如果他太晚回家，会有什么后果。接着看到 deserve 这个单字，它是动词，它的意思是值得或是应得。例如 All children deserve to be loved. 所有的孩子都值得被爱。再看一个例子 Spencer's hard work and dedication deserve recognition. Spencer 的辛勤工作和奉献值得认可。下一个介绍名词 closure 指宽慰、解脱，同时可以是工厂或是企业永久性关闭或是停业的意思。举例来说 Finding closure after a breakup can take time. 在分手后找到宽慰需要时间。又或者说 The closure of the factory resulted in layoffs for hundreds of workers. 工厂关闭导致数百名工人被裁员。后面看到动词 tolerate 表示容忍、容许或是忍耐、忍受。例如 My mom can't tolerate a messy room. 我妈妈无法容忍脏乱的房间。也可以说 Ricky lives in a cold country as he can't tolerate the heat. Ricky 住在一个寒冷的国家，因为他无法忍受高温。最后看到 convince 这个单字，它是动词，表示使相信、使确信或是说服。我们可以说 Several strange occurrences convinced Megan that her house is haunted. 一些奇怪的事件让 Megan 确信她的房子有鬼。最后一个例子 Michael convinced his father to let him use the car. Michael 说服他爸爸让他用车。
Okay, here's what Chloe has to say about the death penalty. She says, I firmly believe in the death penalty. Okay, so she supports the death penalty. True, it's a harsh punishment, but for the most serious crimes like murder and terrorism, it's only right that there are equally serious repercussions. Okay, so again, she firmly believes in the death penalty. Remember here, if you believe in something, you believe in that idea. Like if you're a Christian, you could say, I believe in Jesus. If you say, I believe Jesus, well, that means I believe what he said. He said something, and I think he's telling the truth. But if you're talking about an idea or a religion or a God or something, you believe in that thing, and she believes in the death penalty. She thinks it's the right thing to do for criminals who have committed a crime like murder or whatever. She does agree that it is a harsh punishment. If something's harsh, it is severe. And yes, there are different forms of punishment, but she thinks that this one is a harsh punishment. It is kind of extreme, but it is necessary, she says, for the most serious crimes like murder and terrorism, like blowing up a bus or something. It's only right that there are equally serious repercussions. A repercussion just means something that happens as the result of something. In other words, it's kind of like getting back at them for what they've done. It's making things even. It's getting even Steven with those criminals, making them pay for the crime that they committed.
Exactly, kind of like a consequence. So if you do a really, really terrible thing, like, as Roger said, blow up a bus in an act of terrorism, then maybe you should suffer the death penalty. And she goes on to say victims' families deserve closure, and the death penalty sends a strong message that society won't tolerate such actions. So she's adding in a few other reasons here why she thinks the death penalty is a good thing. The families of the victims. So if you're the family members, the surviving members of the family of a person who was murdered, right? So your mother or brother or sister, someone you know and love was murdered in a terrible act of violence and crime. Well, that family, they deserve closure. Sometimes you'll hear people say, it's unfair that my son was murdered by that guy and he gets to spend the rest of his life sitting comfortably in jail. This is the idea that we want that person out of society, out of our mind, and out of the world in the same way that they took our loved one out of the world by killing them. So those families deserve closure. When you deserve something, you should get something. You have done what is required to have that thing, to be rewarded or given that thing. If you work hard, you deserve getting pay, or you deserve a promotion, or you deserve a pat on the back from your boss. boss. You've worked hard for it, so that's what you should get. So in this case, the families of the victims, they should get closure. Closure here is talking about the emotional idea of sort of turning the page or shutting the book or moving beyond a certain event or trauma or difficulty in your life. If you fight with someone, and even if you want to end your relationship with that person, you have a final discussion, you talk about why your feelings are hurt, you talk about why you can't move on with this relationship, and you say, I wish you all the best, but I will never speak to you again. That has given you closure. In the same way that if you know someone who is dying, you might want to go to the hospital and be there with them at that last moment when they die, because then you have closure. It's sort of like you're turning the page, you're shutting the book, you're moving on in a very formal and emotionally healthy way. A lot of people would say that having closure helps you to move past difficult experiences because at least it's over now, and so your mind can kind of move on to the next thing, move on to the next phase of your life. So for these people, knowing that that murderer has been killed and was no longer there to come back and hurt them or hurt anyone else makes it easier for those people to move on with their lives. And as a sort of preventative or a warning, the death penalty sends a strong message that society won't tolerate such actions. When society makes such a strong law, then it is clearly showing that this is not okay. If something is okay, even if you don't like it, but you're going to live with it, you tolerate that, okay? A parent has to learn to tolerate their baby crying or something like that. You can't yell at the baby when it's crying. It won't understand. That won't help things. You just have to live with it, even if it's not an ideal situation. You have to live with it. Well, we're saying here that society, we won't live with people who murder others, especially in terrorist acts or things like that. That's not okay. You will suffer the death penalty. You have been warned.
That's right. So Chloe supports the death penalty. She feels the families deserve closure. And, of course, society won't tolerate people killing other people. Now, here's what Joseph has to say. I'm not convinced that the death penalty actually prevents crime. Okay, if you're convinced of something, that means you believe it. People have presented some evidence to you and you accept the idea. If you're not convinced, of course, you doubt what people have told you, but he is not convinced that the death penalty prevents crime. He doubts that the death penalty actually prevents crime. He thinks it's not a deterrent. If you're a criminal and you want to kill somebody, you're not thinking about whether you're going to be punished and you're going to have to die. Most criminals probably think they're going to get away with it. Most of us pretty much have overconfidence in what we can do. So I think criminals probably don't really think about the death penalty. And that's what Joseph is thinking here. He's not convinced that it's a proper deterrent to crime. And where's the proof to show that countries with the death penalty have lower murder rates? Yes, he's looking for some actual statistics. Of course, if you have countries with the death penalty, you would expect the murder rate to be lower as a result.
That's a good point. Honestly, he says it feels like it's more about revenge than justice. So as Roger was saying, it's a bit more like that old idea of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. If you poke out my eye, I should be allowed to poke out your eye. If you murder my brother, I should be allowed to murder you or kill you as revenge, just to get back at you, to make myself feel better. You have wronged me, you have hurt me, you have done something against me, now I want to do something against you. Not in any sort of way of balancing the books in a legal way, just more of an emotional way. I'm going to hit you back if you hit me, and then I'll feel better about myself. I'm not sure that actually holds true in the real world, but that's what Joseph is saying. It feels more like if someone murders your friend, then you want to see that person murdered. It's a form of revenge. All right, let's move on. We have one more person to hear from today, and that's Ethan in the next part of the article. Ethan, we need to talk about the elephant in the room, the risk of wrongful convictions. There are many cases of innocent people being executed due to errors in the justice system. Personally, I feel this alone makes the risk too great. Once someone has been executed, they're gone. There's no way to bring them back.
All right, here's what Ethan has to say. We need to talk about the elephant in the room, the risk of wrongful convictions. Now, the term the elephant in the room refers to something that needs to be discussed, it needs to be dealt with, but nobody really wants to because they're afraid of the consequences, but it's still something we need to deal with, and that's what the elephant in the room is, the possibility of a wrongful conviction. Somebody was found guilty by a court and they were sentenced to death. It's very possible that they're innocent, and sometimes with DNA testing and things like that, we do indeed find out that the person was innocent. I believe there was a case many years ago where somebody was executed and they were actually found out to be innocent. It happened in the military or something like that. I can't bring up any specifics here, but it did happen years ago. So that's an example of that, the risk of a wrongful conviction.
That's absolutely true. And I believe just in the month of October of last year, there was a man in Japan who had been on death row since, I believe, the 1980s. And he's 80 years old now, and they did another trial and they found he was innocent. He hadn't actually been executed, but he had been on death row for a very long time. It turned out he didn't do the crime. As Ethan says, there are many cases of innocent people being executed due to errors or mistakes in the justice system. Police lie, police make mistakes. Sometimes a crime happens and the police are under a lot of pressure to catch the killer quickly so they can kind of cut corners. All sorts of different reasons why people could end up in a very terrible situation of being found guilty for a crime they didn't commit. If there's a death penalty, well, that could make their punishment something you can't reverse later on when new evidence comes to light. As he says, personally, I feel this alone, the chance of errors in the judicial process. Personally, I feel this alone makes the risk too great. Once someone has been executed, they're gone. There's no way to bring them back. You can let that person out of jail, even if they've been locked up unfairly for 20 years. You can still unlock their cell and let them free with a big apology and some compensation. They can go on with their life. But once the person has been executed, there is no way to bring them back. And I guess if that's the case too, then the state, the government, is the murderer in that case, right? If someone does get executed incorrectly, it turns out that the government in that case has done the murdering, and I think any law that puts the government in that position of potentially murdering its own people is a law that needs to be looked at very, very carefully.
Okay, we're at the end of our discussion for today. Here comes Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第一部分提到，死刑支持者声称这是必要的威吓手段，而反对者则指出道德担忧与错误定罪的风险。好，那文中它是用名词 conviction 来指定罪、判罪，它是来自动词 convict。那我们来学它的字首字根，看到 vict 或是 vince 这一类的字根有攻击、战胜的意思。那么在 convict 这个字当中，字首 con 它有强调的语义，字根 vict 表示战胜。同学们可以试着联想，邪不胜正，当正义的一方战胜邪恶，那就可以把坏人定罪。我们用这个方式去联想到 convict， 它有判定什么有罪啊，给什么什么定罪的意思。注意它当名词是念作 convict， 用来指说服刑中的囚犯或是已决犯。我们顺便补充几个有这一类字根的单字。第一个是 victor， 它的字根 vict 表示战胜。or 是名词字尾，可以用来指从事什么什么的人，那合在一起 victor 就是胜利者、赢家。第二个补充的是 evict， 它的字首 e 表示离开或是外，那么 e 其实是 ex 的变形，在这边它除了指 out 的语义，它也可以做强调用。那么字根 vict 是战胜的意思，合在一起 evict 它表示逐出、赶出或者是驱逐。第三个补充的是 invincible， 它的字首 in 表示不否定， vinc 是来自字根 vince 表示战胜，那么 ible 就跟 able 一样，可以表达可怎么样的、能怎么样的，合在一起 invincible 不可战胜的，那就是表达说是无敌的、所向无敌的。好，我们在课文第二部分呢，有看到 Chloe 发表她对死刑的看法，她说 I firmly believe in the death penalty. 我坚决认为死刑才是正确的。Believe in 之后可以接名词或动名词。那我们来整理一下它的不同意思。好，第一个我们可以用 believe in something 表达说相信什么什么的能力、效用，认为什么是对的、正确的或应该的。例如 Mia believes in working hard to reach her goals. Mia 相信努力才能达成目标。好，第二个 believe in something 还可以表达相信什么真的存在，信奉或确信什么。像 Do you believe in ghosts? 你相信鬼的存在吗？第三个呢，我们可以用 believe in somebody 去表达对某人有信心、信任某人的意思。例如 I believe in you, just go for it. 我对你有信心，就放手一试，努力去争取吧。好，那么以上今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天单字吧。
Ethic. Dante's personal ethics require him to never lie. Opponent. Opponents of the idea argue that it will harm the environment. Conviction. Lana's conviction for robbery led to a 5-year prison sentence. Deserve. People who help others deserve our respect and gratitude. Tolerate. Mr. Robinson made it clear that he wouldn't tolerate any cheating during the exam. Convince. Ruthie tried to convince her friends that the story was true, but they remained doubtful. Revenge. Neville wanted revenge against Jenna after she embarrassed him in front of the entire class.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I am Mike.
See you next time.